This is a very the joint work, and I would say that it's not really a very mature or advanced stage of work, but it's something which we are doing on and off for last 1 year or so, and there's some statistical results. That's the only thing that I have to present in this, and that I need to I plan to present. So I hope the screen is visible. Uh, all right. So to begin with, we all probably know what humor is, and nobody knows it better than Tariq probably. So, so I'm not trying to define anything here. So I'm not trying to define humor. It's something which I would say, and it takes several different forms. And two of the things that we'll be focusing on in this presentation is two of its communicative purposes. So those of bonding and solidarity building. This we kind of equate with, or say not really equate, but we take politeness as an indicator of solidarity and bonding, and how it could be used in also at the same time promoting animosity and hostility, so which will be represented by aggression in our study. So it's a study which looks at the interaction between humor and how it is used for these different communicative purposes, or more, it's not really how, but more specifically how much of humor is used for this purpose. So it's more about the quantity, right? So there have been extensive debates and conversation during COVID over several issues where one could notice humor, so to say. And this included the role of the governments and various aspects of handling the overall situation, and government's reaction to that. There was a large chunk of memes, jokes that came across, and that was an expression of stereotypical gender roles. We will not be talking a lot about this in this, but this is just to give you a background of what motivated the study. Of course, there was other incident-specific humor. So certain incidents happened during the course of the pandemic, and that led to a lot of jokes and memes again. So the questions that we'll be more specifically addressing, and the bigger study will, of course, is supposed to address the previous ones as well. But in this presentation, the questions that we are trying to address is three simple quantitative questions. So how commonly is humor employed in conversation? So the immediate context for us is COVID-19. That's from where the data is collected. And what are the most common humorous devices that people employ for humor? The second one is there any language specific or platform specific distinctions or similarities in the distribution of these different humorous devices? So I'll just give a brief summary of this in a minute. And the third one is what kind of interpersonal functions that performed by or performed along with humor in the specific context of COVID-19. So the reason COVID-19 is interesting because it was a crisis of so it's something which we have probably not seen in our lifetime, and language could be one of the indicators of understanding how people are trying to cope with it, right? And our initial hypothesis was out of these two functions of politeness and solidarity, and aggression and hostility, was that probably because people are in such bad situation, politeness and solidarity might be the more dominant function that people would be using during the times of COVID for while they are using humor. We'll see if that turned out to be true or not. We collected a corpus of over 12,000 data points this much is what we are using in this study that we are presenting at this point of time. And these were collected from three social media platforms, the usual ones, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and three languages, so Bangla, Hindi, and English. Okay, so how did we collect the data? So from Twitter, we had a set of 4 hashtags that we used for crawling, and it gave us huge amounts of data. Of course, a lot of them was not in the languages of our interest, but nevertheless, a lot of those were in the languages that we're looking for. We used some other ways of localizing the data set. So we tried to collect the data that was generated inside India, and that's kind of ensured. But yeah, it's not foolproof. For Facebook, we use 2 specific pages. There's Ravesh's page and Kunal Kamra 88. And for Bangla, we use Bengali memes. That page has a lot of memes and comments on those. So the specific post that we were looking for, the COVID-19 related post, they were manually sampled out, and the comments from them were then again automatically crawled. For YouTube, we used a bigger chunk of keywords that we used for searching the videos, and then the comments, of course, from those videos were automatically used, then automatically collected. So this resulted in the 12,000. This resulted in a much bigger data set, but 12,000 was the one that we actually annotated and that we used for the study. Okay, so the annotation, of course, it was, in order to do a corpus-based study, we needed the annotation at all the 3 different pragmatic levels of humor, politeness, and aggression. And I just discussed the humor one, the tax set, but the aggression and politeness, they have been discussed a lot in a lot of papers earlier as well. So I won't get into that again. So we had 3 broad top level tags for annotating the humor. So humorous, put down, and non-humorous. And then there were subcategories. So humorous ones were things like canned jokes and teasing and witticism that we used, and you could go through the examples, so I'll not read it out once more. And then there were more subcategories for humorous ones, so there were 5, I guess. Yeah, so canned jokes, teasing, witticism, pun, and self-denigrating humor. And I'm sure that most of you are already familiar with this terminology, at least at a broad level, in the way that we have used the naive sense. Putdowns were of 2 kinds, so mocking and sarcasm, and we didn't club this together with humor because putdown is something which doesn't have a benign aim, so to say, right? And on the other hand, the other humor, simple humor, has more or less a benign aim. So, and that's why these 2 were distinguished. And then we had non-humorous, which was a single category. Now, if we look at the overall proportion of each of these categories in the data, then as you could see that non-humor is, of course, the majority of the data set, and it just turns out that people are not really humorous a lot on social media, at least. And in fact, put downs are almost double of the humorous comments. So that in itself was some kind of a revelation for us. Then the different subtypes that we just saw, mock and sarcasm, and those were the 2 subtypes of put downs. And as you'll see that the next big thing after non-humorous stuff is put downs, so, right? So it's not, and together they, as you could see, they are almost 60% of the whole data set, and then of course more than 60% actually. And then there are other kinds of humor. So as we know, and probably as we have thought about it, the self-denegating humor is the least common among in the data that we had, and the next big thing was tease, and there was some witticism pun. But yeah. Okay, across languages, the this one is also probably a little somewhat affected by the amount of data that we had, but in general, you'll see that the same trends, of course, will continue, and across languages, the ranking is actually similar. So non-humorous is the largest category, followed by Putdowns, and then humorous are the smallest ones. Okay, across different across different languages, different subtypes. So, and probably you could see that for a language like Hindi, we do not. Oh, that's surprising. So, probably there's something wrong with this chart. So, there was a sarcasm for Hindi as well. It's not missing. But then the proportion across languages among these different subtypes, they also are not really revealingly different. So they are kind of more or less similar. I will look at different platforms. The story actually continues. It's kind of a boring story, so in the sense that we do not have much of a difference across these different platforms. The same continues for different platforms, except the fact that sarcasm is actually much lower on YouTube, and then we do not have some of these non-put down humorous stuffs on YouTube, so which they are just not there. And among Facebook and Twitter, we have on Facebook we have a much larger chunk of mock than it is on Twitter. Twitter is probably much more into sarcasm, and so it's almost equally shared. So sarcasm, mock, and tease is equally shared on Twitter. So this is one place where we could see the differences across the three platforms and how people use language across the three platforms.
Dr. Ritesh, I'll ask you to rush up and also request you to give some substantiations, some instances, examples that would help people identify with the subtypes of humor that you have presented.
Yeah, so should I go back to that slide, Tariq, because I don't have examples in these slides.
Okay. So please proceed.
Yeah, I had those examples in the beginning itself. So I'll come back to this. I'll try to rush through this. All right. So, okay. So, to conclude this in probably 2 or 3 sentences, and I'll not try to explain these slides, but what these figures essentially show is the co-occurrence of 2 of the phenomena. So humor, different categories of humor and different categories of, in this case, politeness, so which is polite, impolite, and neutral, and how they interact. Similarly, how these different categories interact. So the things of interest here is, for example, that if something is impolite, you see the largest number of impolite comments are actually mock, if they're employing some kind of humorous devices. This is followed by sarcasm and then tease. So this is how it has to be read. The darkest one shows that the maximum number of co-occurrences, and you see that in the overall situation, for since we had the largest category of non-humorous devices, non-humorous comments that we had, so for almost everything here, non-humorous ones are the darkest ones. But the if you want to look at take a closer look at these, then you would probably notice that put-downs are mostly considered impolite, which is which you'd expect, but then what you would not expect is that a lot of put downs are also considered polite in the data set, right? So similarly, some of what has been classified as humorous, they are also considered impolite, but most of those humorous ones are polite. So that's how this needs to be I'll just skip through this. I know that the time is up, so I'll just come to the, and there's quite a bit of similar analysis for different platforms and different languages that we did for the study. So to summarize, what we found was the sarcasm and mock wins hands down, in the sense that they are the largest employed humorous devices on across different social media platforms. So they're also mostly considered impolite, and uh, uh, the hypothesis that we started with, that humorous devices would be uh, used for solidarity, especially in times of crisis, that kind of came crashing down. So even in the times of crisis, it seems that it's not really being used for that kind of purposes. Across platforms and languages, I didn't get into the details, but they are used. Um, there are only minor differences across platforms and languages, not something large, but probably those differences may also get ironed out if we use bigger data set, probably a slightly bigger data set for these studies. So that's it from my side, and I'm sorry we're not including examples in the chart part, but if you want to have a look at some of these examples, then I could go through this again, the example parts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritesh. It was a very interesting one. I've been looking forward for this. What my question is that humor is very categorical, and pun, sarcasm, wit, mockery, all of these are somewhat agenda based. Like what I might find mockery or humorous from a certain agenda, be it political, be it gender agenda, be it whatever agenda, personal agenda, might not appear funny to the other person. So my question to you, Ritesh, is that was there an awareness of this, that there might be two different? I mean, they are humorous agenda based, and also was there any conscious effort on you by you as creators of this corpus to keep it balanced, or were you okay with it being a one-sided humor representation? Thank you.
Okay, so okay. So to answer that question, I need to apologize because I haven't put in acknowledgements. The thanks to my students who actually did the annotation. So there were I think four of them. So Shyam, Sonal, and Yogesh, and also Siddharth. So they were the ones who did the annotations, and the reason we used so we had this idea, we had this understanding, what Prachi said, that it will vary, right? So the decisions of the annotators will vary, and in order to take that into consideration, we took two annotations per comment, and if there was a disagreement across the two annotators, we try to take the third one as well. So so we have sloppily used majority voting on that, which is not the best way of doing it, but that's how we have used it for now.
Dr. Parmeshwari has also posted a question, but before her question, let me add to the discussion. We will see numerous instances of Holocaust jokes, and we notice that on very often in most cultures, jokes on gods do prevail, and or humor on gods do prevail, and that gives a lot of clue about things that we fear the most. We are ready to confront them through these instances of humor in different forms. I'll request Dr. Ritesh to respond to the question Dr. Parmeshwari has posted here. Her question is, what is the inter-annotator agreement you got here?
So we calculated the inter-annotator agreement for the top level 3 categories that we had. We ended up with an agreement score of around 0.78 or something like that was the Krippendorf's alpha that we got for the top level category. For the subtypes, as you would probably guess, it was something much lower. I think it was half of that, 0.4, 0.5, something like that. So that was the kind of score that we got. This was the experiment was done with four again, yeah, it's the same four people that we used for annotation. They were the ones who participated in these experiments.